Hey, elasticians, we're back.
Howdy, y'all. Today we're going to talk about a common allocation health error, which usually you'll end up seeing while ingesting. But what we're covering is the error that says this action would add a certain amount of total shards, but the cluster currently has maximum shards open. So, Annie, if you mind clicking us to the next tab, this error has two variations, maximum quote unquote normal shards and separately maximum frozen shards. So this is a protective setting. It's not a hard limit, but it comes from the cluster settings, cluster max shards per node, and separately cluster max shards per node frozen. I know, I stumbled on that. So
Ours, for sure.
yeah. So calling out in these docs, it is related to the node counts. It is not related to the node sizes. So
Cool.
just keep that in mind when we go and look at it. Um, when this error ends up occurring, if we can click to the next tab, the error is going to, in future versions, I think like 8.15 and up, the error now actually literally links to this doc on how to resolve, which ends up just telling us like when you encounter the error, you can just temporarily override the max shards per node because it's a protective setting. Go figure out your shard architecture, whatever problems may occur, fix it, and then afterwards reset this protective override. Um, there's not usually a harm in overriding it short term. We don't necessarily recommend overriding it long term. So we today are going to go cover the top reasons support sees why this may occur, but obviously for all y'all's clusters, you're gonna have to go investigate yourself. We're just gonna cover common reasons for you to also walk through and look at.
Here we go.
Heck yeah.
Hack. All right. So we have our unlimited power deployment, and we can see this morning when we've logged into work, ready to be productive and thrive, our deployment is unhealthy. Womp womp. The first thing to note is this deployment has two data nodes. Very important based off Stef's previous comments about the topic today. The easiest way to figure out what is happening is using the Health UI. So if we click over to the Health UI, we'll see the description of what's happening. Cluster is close to reaching the configured max number of shards for data nodes. If we click on that description, it's going to take us into a more detailed page. And if you actually click how to fix, like Steph said, it's going to take you to documentation that will show you exactly how to address that, and it breaks it down a little bit more. That being said, I totally understand that sometimes things don't read as well when they're new as when we've seen them a bunch of times. So the goal is to go through this and give everyone total confidence for if this ever happens, if things get out of hand.
I love it. So also to Annie's point, if you logged in or if you pulled the Elasticsearch Health API, you would see this, oh, hey, you're about to have a problem or are in a problem. This is how you go resolve. Also highlighting for people at home, just in case you end up seeing it client side first. So client side, you would have had an error response body. Do you mind if we go show under API console? Let's go try to create an index and end up showing people what that would look like. Again, it's just going to be that error we're talking about that says total max shards already open. But if we hit submit, awesome. So it's 400 HTTP error, and then the response body just says it currently has its maximum shards available. So in my experience, usually this literally just happens at a random point of ingest or separately. When customers are upgrading, this potentially blocks the Kibana upgrade because Kibana needs to go create temporary re-ingest targets and then finally resolves to its final state after doing a saved object migration. For our purposes, thankfully, Kibana will self-heal after we solve this problem. So how that doc said to just go override total max shards is what we can do to get out of the error. And if you encountered this error during a Kibana upgrade, you could do the same. go finish your upgrade and come back and fix this. So do you mind, Annie, if we go DevTools? Let's just override how it's telling us. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the commands preset as per usual. Last time we didn't, things got a little wild.
Yeah.
So, um, so as before in this doc, right? Yes, right here, this is how you can override your shards. So we're using this document. I'm gonna go ahead and run this. Cool?
Awesome. Yeah. So default for shards per node is 1,000. We're overriding it by 200. But now that we've overrode it, if you mind going back to that deployment console, we can now run that put command and just prove the index now creates. Yay! Hey, look, we fixed it! Awesome! That was a quick video.
I know, it's done. Bye. Just kidding.
Yeah. So now let's talk about resolving it historically. So now we're going to just take a meandering walk from support's perspective of the top reasons we end up seeing this come up. We're both going to use the Kibana index management UI, but also I have pre-populated some of those commands under DevTools just because if you hit that max shards per node, maybe Kibana is not available. Maybe you only have the Elasticsearch API to use. So we're going to show you default to showing it in Kibana, but also have those commands for if you have to do the same via Elasticsearch. With that, Annie, do you mind kicking us off? First reason we might encounter this error?
Cool. So under index management, there's an option to go ahead and just set primaries to descending, and that's how we're looking at this. On these top two indices, the first thing we notice is there are 150 primaries. And the general recommendation is that primaries don't exceed the number of data nodes that we
Or
have
are
available
proportional to them?
or are proportional to the data nodes available in our cluster. Previously, I noted we have 2 data nodes. So for Jabberwocky, we have 148 primary shards too many, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
We also have way too many on Java. So that's one of the first scenarios that can cause what we're seeing in this overwhelm. And we should address it.
Agreed. So ironically, for support, we frequently end up usually seeing this because customers testing just want to know, is there a cap? And what's easier to test than just by hitting submit, right? And then after you hit submit the first time and it goes through, you try to hit submit the second time and it does not go through because then you've hit your cap, right? So for our purposes, the docs count column ends up showing null, which means there's 0 docs in those indices. So we could just go delete them, right? If you had found yourself actually ingesting into those indices, same as our previous video about shard sizes being too big and needing to reindex that data into a better sharding strategy, you would also need to follow that exact same process in order to fix these 2 indices. So if that applies to you, kind of go check out our other video. Know you love to see us. But for our purposes, those indices are empty, so we're just going to delete them.
Cool. You want me to go delete them now?
Yeah, is that okay? Oh, sorry, you can delete them from the UI.
Oh, duh.
You can delete them both ways.
Manage 2 indices.
Yeah. Awesome.
Delete.
I think it gives you a warning like, hey, that's permanent. And you're like, good.
Yes, and if you're ever unsure, make sure to have a backup.
Yes.
Deleting stuff is always going to be a toss-up unless you have this very blatant test environment. So please make sure you have backups. But
Agreed.
we don't need them.
Yeah. To be fair, Elastic Cloud takes backups for you automatically. We have backups of our empty indices.
Yeah.
But for everybody at home, please make sure you have backups. That's a hard conversation to have.
My least favorite conversation. Anyway, so first scenario, done. We took care of it.
Yeah, yeah. So the question becomes, is there more to see? For our purposes, that very first row says the next primaries, which are all test indices, start at 1. So no other indices are having that problem, thankfully. If we needed to check the same from DevTools, do you mind if we port over? We'll be running a cat indices command, and it is sorted by primaries descending on line 6. So if we hit submit on that, we'll end up seeing the exact same as we just saw under Kibana Index Management tab. So, yay, we solved the first one. Awesome. If you mind, let's use this one to look at the next ballpark. So if we can hit play, this is expand wildcards all helps us see system indices. And then we're just sorting by the index name because system indices start with that dot, it's going to show at the beginning of this list. So if we can just take like a walking scroll through this, what we end up seeing is there's APM indices, there's Kibana Elastic Assistant, list default is ML, logs enterprise, .ent search. If you keep scrolling, we're just going to find like a whole bunch of .ent search. Yeah, we keep scrolling, we keep seeing. So ent search is backing literal enterprise search, right? Annie, do we have enterprise search enabled?
No.
Yeah, let's go show that. So back on our deployment overview page, if it had been enabled, there would have been an enterprise search tab on the left-hand side. If we go click edit and scroll down to wherever it is, somewhere in there, we'll see that it says, no, it's farther down. Yeah. We'll see that it says add capacity. So we don't have enterprise search. How do we have enterprise search indices? The answer is it creating a deployment creates with enterprise search by default, unless you advanced configuration toggle it off. If you'll go to a activity tab, I created this with enterprise search enabled and then afterwards disabled it. So if we look at that final tab for enterprise search, if you scroll up that subtab, enterprise search, you'll see 7 days ago, I created it with enterprise search and then afterwards disabled it. So creating with enterprise search hardware creates all those backing indices, and then afterwards removing the hardware does not remove the software because Elastic by default avoids data loss. So having created with enterprise search, now deciding I don't want enterprise search, I would go review that data, make sure I don't want it. All of ours are mostly empty indices, so we can literally just go delete them. Do you mind if we show that from DevTools this time?
Yeah.
So DevTools will be a delete space .ent -search star. So all of that data can go. Search.
Oh my gosh, the way I
Sriracha.
search.
Oh my god, it was almost
Sriracha.
sriracha. Sorry, I love
I'm
hot
so
sauce.
hungry. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And we can
Gonna
hit
go ahead.
play and remove those. Awesome. Now if we run that last command again. So this command
Okay,
still
let's
shows
scroll.
system indices. Some of them are expected, but that list, like we're already off that list. We're down into Groger indices now, right? So we just removed the bulk of that problem. Yay! We just showed a second way how you can end up with unexpected indices or shard counts. While we're here, let's cover a second ballpark that can end up inducing on customers' clusters. Annie, do you mind opening the hamburger menu? We won't click into, we'll just scroll through and show. So when any user, not just admin, clicks through these sub UIs, specifically the solutions. So under search, under observability, under security, clicking into that UI ends up inducing default system indices so that those UIs can end up loading. If for your use case, you're not expecting to use those UIs at all, we potentially say to hide them. But those end up inducing some of these default system indices. So for example, like where we were showing internal alerts in that cat indices list, that's inducing in order to load that security UI. So if you want to remove those indices because they're empty, you totally can, but just calling out, revisiting those UIs will reinduce those indices. So for our purposes, Either hiding them removes that problem into the future, or just know like those indices are going to exist into perpetuity, into foreverness, whatever that word is. uh, calling out for people watching the video. We're currently demonstrating on 8.15. Before 8.4, those indices would associate to an ILM built-in policy that included rollover. Um, Before 8.4, rollover would roll over even for empty indices. So it is possible that you would have, like we don't have in our example, but it is possible for older versions, you would have that plethora of like, you clicked into observability 2 years ago and have been slowly accumulating indices over time when it rolled over at that 30-day max point, right? So it is possible for that problem to creep up on you having clicked into that UI some time ago. Thankfully, after 8.4, it's no longer applicable, right? But just calling that out as another potential common reason. Okay, so at this point, we have handled indices with extremely large shards. We've handled the enterprise search functionality, and we've handled clicking into solution pages inducing empty indices. So the next ballpark we want to go look at is same as we discussed earlier. What if you just have empty indices? What's with that? Yeah, you can hit play. Okay, so this time cat
Honestly,
indices. Oh, I'm sorry.
it's okay. I was just gonna say I see this a lot and I think it's easily missed. I think people are just keeping everything alive and don't realize sometimes that they're no longer necessary.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, especially as support. We see this a bunch. I'm not sure it actually happens a bunch, but it's one of the first things we check because it comes up on all the cases discussing sharding strategy. So what we're
Yeah.
looking for is docs count of 0. Um, Same as we just discussed in that like previous example about solutions. I think while we have expand wildcards equals all, we're going to be showing those solution examples. Do you mind if we rerun line 10 without that query parameter? So just remove expand wildcards equals all.
My mouse is sticking, so give me just a sec.
You're good.
Giving me a,
Awesome.
there we go.
Perfect. Okay, so some of them showed it's a lot shorter. And then line 12, we have a test 10. Can you just scroll past that? Let's like keep looking at our index names. Here we see tests 1 through 7 are all empty indices. So this is a common situation. Again, coincidentally, support sees is maybe you created a bunch of indices and never ingested into them, right? Don't test in production. Want, want.
Test in production.
For our purposes, we can go say delete test star. And I guess also Skywalker that we just created.
We can do him last. Just kidding.
Yeah. Skywalkers live forever. Somehow Palpatine return. No comma, or no space, sorry. No comma, no space after the comma. Wow, my words are not wording today. Yay!
So, okay.
Cool.
So,
So we're going to show the other indices that we haven't fixed. After that, we are going to start showing some indices that do have docs, but they have extremely low counts, which is also surprising. I like that when you scroll, it looks like we're looking at daily indices, right?
yeah.
So at this point, we're actually going to get into, now you've kind of cleared out from the support side, common situations. Maybe you did it once and forgot about it. Now we're actually going to get into an actual sharding strategy example. Do you mind if we show this from index management? Again, it's going to show the exact same thing. But under index management, can we search for the word Grogu? Perfect. And then can we sort by index name? Descending? Okay, so here we end up showing kind of a daily index pattern going back in time. So again, fake example, but what we end up wanting to show for a sharding strategy example is if I had an analytics engine that was attempting to ingest a daily report, that client side can determine what the index pattern it's trying to target will be. For example, like Logstash ingesting into Elasticsearch, you can say the output will be this index name. That accepts date math. So in our fake example, I went and just created like let's just add in date math, and so it's going to create a index per day. So here we end up seeing, like starting on line 3, there's only a handful of docs per day, and our indices are only ending up at kilobytes in size. So the backing story on this is actually a lot of analytics engines will capture a daily snapshot and forward them to another source. For our purposes, that's intended to be a daily report that stores into an ongoing index, but because of that date math, we accidentally set it up that this would be a daily index or a daily report ingesting into its own daily index every single day. So that's an example, again, of how you can kind of blow up your cluster that we expected only Grogu, but what we actually set up ended up inducing a fair number of hundreds of indices instead of one index. Again, in this situation, the reindex documentation runs you through how to reindex from multiple ingest targets into one. We would just say, go reindex all of those individual documents into that one parent Grogu index, and then afterwards come delete everybody prior. So
Right.
that, in my experience, is actually super common of trying to be like, I was being smart, and then afterwards was like, simple sometimes is smarter than smart is. So, common example. Last example, do you mind if we sort Grogu ascending? This is data from the year 2000 when we're only expecting analytics data from the last year. So, final common thing that support ends up seeing that I think people end up seeing across all databases is, what if I accidentally have data from 20 years ago that I forgot to clear out?
Tech debt.
Tech debt. Yeah. Again, these example indices
Yeah.
are extremely small, but also highlighting, like when you go and review those index lists, frequently you'll end up finding changes in strategy potentially left residuals over time. So this also would be the example of just clicking each one of those and hitting delete, or going against the Grogu year 2000 search pattern star and deleting those from DevTools.
I think we should definitely do this in the console.
Agreed. I was like, it definitely would be easier. 2000 star. Yeah.
Boop, boop, boom.
Okay. So at this point, especially because we removed those indices with so many primaries, our shard counts should be fixed. You could run cat shards to know that. For our purposes, let's just go try to reset that override.
You want to do it in DevTools or do you want to
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah, so instead of 1200, we're just going to set it back to null, which will accept the 1000 default. Look, I like it.
Sorry.
You're good.
Play.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's overrode, and then let's recreate Skywalker. Good thing we deleted it. Now we can test with it.
Yeah, I'm delighted. If I could figure out how to spell today.
It's cute that DevTools just automatically knows. Yay! Okay, so
Ah,
this demonstrates after fixing our shard strategy, the issue does not repeat into the future and won't repeat unless we again encounter some shard strategy issue in the future. But we actually fixed it. So now we're no longer encountering max shards reached or max normal shards reached.
Yeah, and we talked about multiple scenarios that you can look for on your own deployments. Even if you're not seeing the error yet, it gives you an opportunity to clean up any unnecessary data data.
Agreed. I like it. Do you mind if we wrap up just by showing that health page ends up also resolving after we ended up resolving? Yeah, so we can go to the health page and it, as Annie was highlighting, just shows green. So as soon as you fix it, the other way to check is just by demonstrating that this page shows a green checkbox on that shard strategy. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I hope all of us have happy, healthy shard strategies.
Same. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Bye all.